Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You guys know I love getting a little spooked, and I'm sure you do too since you're here. So today, we're going to get into some true scary stories.
Oh, yeah. Always a good time to delve into the creepy side of things.
Right. And to help me unpack all the chills and thrills we're going to be analyzing, we have a real expert with us today. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. I'm excited to get into these stories and see what we can learn from them.
So for today's deep dive, we're cracking open 10 terrifying true scary stories, Volume 7, a YouTube classic from Mr. Nightmare. We'll be linking that in the description. But we're not just here to get goosebumps. We're going beyond the surface level to uncover the common threads, the psychological triggers, the things that make these stories stick with you long after the video ends.
Right.
Totally.
These stories often tap into those universal fears and anxieties we all share, even if we don't always realize it. They make us think about our own vulnerabilities.
I think one of the biggest ones that always gets me is the lurking figure. You know, that feeling of being watched, of someone hiding in the shadows.
Oh, yeah. That's a primal fear. The feeling of being hunted. Like in that story about the guy walking to his girlfriend's house with the crouched man following him, or the one with the hooded figure stalking the grandpa and his dog on the farm.
Yeah, that one was creepy. And then there's that skier story where, well, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen the video, but let's just say not all skiers are friendly.
Right. That's what makes it so terrifying. The lurking figure plays on our fear of the unknown, of the potential for danger hiding just beneath the surface of everyday life. It could be anyone.
Yeah, and it's not even just about physical danger. It's the psychological torture. The feeling of being targeted, hunted, completely vulnerable. Like you said, it's primal.
It's the anticipation, the suspense, not knowing what's going to happen or when. That's what keeps you on the edge of your seat. It triggers that primal fear response, even if the threat never fully materializes.
Okay, well, let's move on to something else that I think really gets under people's skin. Home invasion. It just feels like such a violation, a total breach of your safe space.
Oh, absolutely. Our homes are supposed to be our sanctuaries, right? But these stories completely shatter that sense of security. They make you question your own vulnerability, the fragility of safety.
It makes you think, like, if you're not even safe in your own home, where are you safe?
Exactly. It preys on our deepest anxieties about losing control, about chaos invading our personal space. Like those stories we have here. The man with the axe at the door during the storm, the group of men in the van showing up late at night, even that one about the ping pong table that turns into a terrifying basement ordeal.
Speaking of things that make you question your reality, we've also got some stories that go into the unexplained, the paranormal, the things that go bump in the night. Those always...
Yeah, the paranormal, always a crowd pleaser.
Totally. So we've got the story about the voice mimicking the narrator's mom, calling from the basement, the toy that starts activating on its own, and that one where the door slowly creaks open, seemingly by itself. I hate that.
I think it's interesting how these stories often play on our desire to believe in something beyond the ordinary. We're fascinated by the unknown, the mysteries that science can't fully explain.
And it's both terrifying and exhilarating, right? To think that there might be forces beyond our comprehension at work, whether you believe in ghosts or not, there's no denying that these stories have a chilling effect.
Oh, for sure. They tap into that primal fear of the unknown, of things we can't control or explain. And they leave you with this lingering sense of unease, wondering if there's truly more to the world than what we see.
Okay, but let's shift gears a bit and talk about those heart-stopping moments, the close calls and narrow escapes that have you gripping your seat. We've got the narrator escaping that lurking man thanks to his girlfriend's mom, the dad, avoiding the axe-wielding man by calling the cops.
And don't forget the pepper spray incident in the woods and that insane escape from the basement using screwdrivers.
Yes. Those are the ones that really get your heart racing. It's like they build suspense, make you fear for the protagonist's safety, and then bam, deliver that thrilling relief when they manage to escape.
It's classic storytelling, but it always works. It taps into our desire for resolution, for the good guy to overcome adversity, and the fact that they survive, often by a hair, reminds us that even in the face of danger, there's a chance for escape.
And sometimes it's those close calls that make you realize just how fragile life can be, how things could change in an instant.
Definitely a wake-up call to appreciate what we have and to never take our safety for granted. You know, while these stories are scary, they also reflect real-world dangers and societal anxieties.
Right. It's not all ghosts and goblins. There's some serious stuff in here, like the story about the crypts and that, well, gruesome discovery. It's a chilling reminder of the violence that exists in our communities.
And the power dynamics, the territorial disputes, the senseless violence that fuels gang activity. It's a harsh reality.
Then you have the potential home invasion with the van full of guys, which just preys on our feels of being targeted, of our homes being violated. It makes you think twice about locking your doors.
It's a reminder to be aware of our surroundings, trust our instincts, and take precautions to protect ourselves and our families.
And of course, we can't forget the ping pong table story. That one takes us down a dark path, showing the dangers of the internet, the dark underbelly of online interactions.
It's a chilling reminder that the virtual world can have very real and dangerous consequences. A cautionary tale about being vigilant, doing your research, and trusting your gut when something feels off.
And we can't forget the story about the woman who almost became a victim of a serial rapist. It shines a light on the dangers women face, particularly when walking alone at night.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder of the importance of personal safety awareness and trusting your instincts.
It's easy to think, that would never happen to me, but these stories are a wake-up call that these dangers are real. They can affect anyone. So what do you think so far? What's been the scariest story for you?
Oh, that's a tough one. They all have their own brand of creepy. But I think the one that really stuck with me was, well, we'll save that for later. I don't want to spoil anything for our listeners.
Good point. Let's keep them in suspense. So what do you say we take a quick break and come back to unpack all the psychological goodies lurking beneath these terrifying tales?
Sounds good to me. I'm ready to dive even deeper.
Me too. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go anywhere, and maybe keep a light on just in case. Welcome back, everyone. So we just spent the last half of the deep dive getting good and creeped out, but now I kind of want to shift gears a bit and talk about why we even enjoy these stories in the first place.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Why do we seek out things that scare us?
Exactly. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but there's got to be some psychological reason behind it.
I think there are a few. One is this idea of catharsis, like a release of pent-up emotions. By experiencing these intense feelings like fear and anxiety in a safe environment, we can sort of process them without any real-world consequences.
So that's a controlled dose of fear. We get the adrenaline rush without actually being in danger.
Right? Think about it. When we're scared, our bodies release adrenaline, whether the threat is real or just in our minds. So in a safe context like watching a horror movie or listening to a scary story, that adrenaline can actually be kind of enjoyable.
It's like a natural high. I guess that explains why some people love those extreme haunted houses.
Exactly. But it's not just the physiological response. There's also a cognitive element at play.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about how our brains are wired to look for patterns to solve puzzles, and when we figure something out, we get a little dopamine hit.
So it's like we get a reward for figuring out the scary story, making sense of the chaos.
Yeah, and that feeling of resolution, of the tension being released, is especially satisfying when it comes to something that's initially frightening. So basically, we're getting a dopamine hit from figuring out the scary story, which makes us want to experience more of them.
Interesting. So we're kind of hardwired to enjoy a good scare, but I'm also wondering, why are some people drawn to the really dark, disturbing stuff?
Well, that gets a little more complex. Some people might have a higher threshold for fear, meaning they need more intense stimuli to get that same rush.
Like they need a bigger dose of scary to get that dopamine hit.
Right. And for some, it might even be a way of facing their fears head-on, desensitizing themselves to things that frighten them.
So like exposure therapy, but with scary stories.
In a way, yes. By repeatedly exposing themselves to these narratives, they might be able to lessen the grip that those fears have on them. But of course, it's important to maintain a balance. We don't want to become so desensitized that we lose our empathy for real-world suffering.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's all about perspective, right? We can enjoy the thrill of a good scare without losing sight of the fact that these stories are often inspired by real events, real human experiences.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the social aspect of storytelling. Think about it, sharing scary stories is something humans have done for centuries. It's like a tradition.
Oh yeah, it's like gathering around a campfire and swapping ghost stories. It's a way to connect with others, to share something that both scares and excites us.
Right? Sharing these stories can be a way of bonding, of creating a sense of community, and even of processing our own fears.
It's like saying, hey, I'm scared of this too. You're not alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It normalizes those fears, acknowledges our shared vulnerabilities, and maybe makes them feel a little less overwhelming.
Okay, so we've got the thrill, the dopamine, the social bonding, even a potential for fear therapy. But can these stories actually teach us anything about staying safe in the real world?
I think so. While these stories are often exaggerated or embellished for entertainment, they can still offer some insights into the psychology of predators, the tactics they might use, and the importance of being aware.
For example.
Well, a lot of these stories highlight the importance of being aware of your surroundings, paying attention to people who might be following you or acting suspiciously. Like in that story about the lurking figure on the way to the girlfriend's house. If something feels off, it probably is.
Trust your gut, right?
Exactly. Our instincts are often our best defense mechanism. If you feel like you're being followed, trust that feeling and take steps to protect yourself.
Don't be afraid to make a scene call for help or run to a safe place.
Right. Your safety is paramount. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Another thing that these stories often emphasize is the importance of having a plan, especially when it comes to home security.
Like knowing who to call, having a safe room, or maybe even investing in a security system.
It's not about living in fear, but about being prepared. Having a plan in place can give you a sense of control and peace of mind.
And then there's the ping pong table story. That one's a reminder that the internet can be a dangerous place, especially when it comes to meeting strangers.
Yeah, that one's a real cautionary tale.
Right.
It highlights the importance of being cautious, doing your research, and trusting your gut when something feels off. Meeting in a public place, letting someone know where you're going, bringing a friend. Those are all good precautions to take.
And if something feels wrong, don't hesitate to leave. No deal is worth risking your safety.
Exactly. So while these stories might not be real-life survival guides, they do offer some valuable food for thought. They encourage us to think critically about potential threats and to have those sometimes uncomfortable conversations about safety.
They make us think about those what-if scenarios and hopefully take steps to prevent them from becoming reality.
And they remind us that while we can't control everything that happens, we can take steps to protect ourselves and those we care about. It's all about being aware, being prepared, and trusting our instincts.
So while we're enjoying the chills and thrills of these stories, we're also learning some valuable lessons. We're engaging with our fears, exploring the darker side of human nature, and maybe becoming a little bit more prepared for whatever life throws our way.
I think that's a great way to put it. These stories, while entertaining, also offer a chance for reflection, for growth, and for connecting with that primal part of ourselves that both fears and craves the unknown.
Well said. So I guess the question now is, what do we do with all of this? We've unpacked the psychology, the scares, the lessons, but where do we go from here?
That's a question we'll have to explore further in the last part of our deep dive. Stay tuned, we've got more to uncover.
Okay, deep divers, we're back for the final plunge into the world of 10 terrifying, true, scary stories. I feel like we've been through a lot together, haven't we?
We have. We've explored the chills, the thrills, the psychology behind it all. But I think there's one big question we still need to tackle.
The big one, right? What do these stories tell us about ourselves, about society, about the power of fear?
Exactly. It's a layered question, and I think it starts with understanding that fear is a fundamental part of being human. It's wired into us. It's what kept our ancestors alive.
It's like we're programmed to be afraid to some extent.
Right. And these stories, they give us a way to tap into that fear, to explore it in a safe way. But it's not just about releasing those anxieties, it's also about learning from them.
So like we were saying before, it's a mental workout. It's building up our resilience.
Yeah, exactly. By confronting those fears, even in a fictional setting, we're strengthening our ability to deal with uncertainty with the unknown. And that can translate into real-world benefits like increased awareness, better intuition, and maybe even a greater sense of agency.
So it's not just about being scared, it's about becoming more aware, more capable of handling whatever comes our way. But what about the societal angle? Do these stories reflect something about the fears we share as a culture?
Oh, absolutely. Think about the recurring themes we see: home invasion, stalking, encounters with strangers. These anxieties, they're not just individual. They reflect broader societal concerns about safety, security, and the breakdown of trust in our communities.
It's like we're living in a time where it feels like danger could be lurking anywhere.
And these stories, they give a voice to that fear. They allow us to confront it, process it, and maybe even find some catharsis.
Yeah.
But there's also a cautionary element to them, a reminder to be vigilant.
You mean like they're telling us to be more careful?
In a way, yes. They highlight the potential for danger and encourage us to be more aware of our surroundings, to trust our instincts, and to take steps to protect ourselves.
So it's not about living in fear, but about being prepared.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between being aware and being paranoid, between trusting others and being cautious. It's a tricky balance, but it's one we have to strive for.
Okay, so we've talked about the personal and societal implications of fear. But what about fear itself? Why are we so drawn to these stories? Why do they have such a hold on us?
Well, as we've discussed, fear is primal. It's deeply rooted in our evolutionary past. It's what helped our ancestors survive. And these stories, they tap into that ancient wiring. They remind us of our own vulnerability, of the fragility of life.
So it's not just entertainment, it's almost like a survival mechanism passed down through storytelling.
Exactly. And while the specific threats we face may change over time, the underlying fear remains the same. The fear of the unknown, the unpredictable, the things that threaten our sense of safety and security.
And these stories, they give us a way to confront those fears, to explore them, to maybe even find a sense of control amidst the chaos.
Right. They remind us that while we can't eliminate fear entirely, we can learn to manage it, to understand it, and to use it as a catalyst for growth, for resilience, for connecting with others who share those same fears.
Wow. So what have we learned from all this? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is that fear is a natural, universal human experience. It's not something to be ashamed of or to try to suppress. It's part of what makes us human. And by understanding our fears, by confronting them, by learning from them, we can actually use them to our advantage.
We can turn fear into a source of strength, of resilience, of connection.
Exactly. And that's a powerful message, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. So as we wrap up our deep dive into 10 terrifying, true, scary stories, I want to leave our listeners with this. Embrace the chills, explore the darkness, but don't let fear control you.
Use it as fuel. Use it to learn, to grow, to connect. And remember, we're all in this together.
Well said. And that's a wrap on another deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and maybe keep a light on just in case.